What is up, everybody? Monday night, we're barking. It's after dark, unless you can see out of Jake Roose's window back there. I'm Jake Rowe, and that is, as I said, Jake Roose. We're from Dawgs HQ, and Bark After Dark's back. We were not with you last week. We had one of those days, one of those kind of like couldn't get some things lined up, but we are back this week. We're excited. We got Andy Staples, our man here from On 3, and Roose, why don't we just go ahead and bring him on? We got plenty of time to get to our stuff when it's a little later on. I've got a visitor coming right here, by the way.
I'm with an appearance from Hammer and Hank himself.
Yeah,
man.
absolutely. So let's go ahead and get Andy on. What's up, dude? How's it going, Andy?
Oh, it's wonderful here in North Central Florida, where we don't have basements, despite what Billy Napier says.
Oh my!
That was the funniest part of all that, by the way. I don't know, all you UGA fans. I do realize you do keep track of some things at Florida, maybe not everything, but Billy Napier struck a nerve with the Florida fan base, saying something about people in rural North Central Florida saying things in their basements. And as an Alachua County resident, I frankly am offended because we are way too close to sea level to have basements here.
Yeah, the water table just wouldn't allow it.
The funniest part is my wife and I were driving past a newer neighborhood yesterday, and there is a house that they're building that's kind of on an incline, and we don't have a lot of hills in this town, and it is kind of up on. It looks like a lot of houses you'd see in Georgia, and I'm like, I wonder if they could actually have a basement.
Oh yeah, it was like a point of wow, incredible.
Yeah,
they might be able to work one
has
in
a
there.
freaking basement.
Yeah, sure.
Andy, this is the third time you've been on with us, and you are on because I really wanted to talk about this Florida thing. We normally don't talk a ton of college football on the show. This is more of kind of like let's get into people stories as opposed to
yeah.
But we talked about this briefly before the show. We didn't touch base on it more than that. That's how good I am at my job. Andy, what happened Saturday after that game and what's going on at Florida right now is one of the more unbelievable things I think I've ever experienced in college football. I can't ever remember a program being in this particular position that Florida's in right now, which is not a good one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with Florida, you've seen a lot of firings over the last 14 years. And so, but they've all had their own unique flavor. This one is and I'm saying it as if it's already happened, but it felt like at the end of the Miami game, like there's no coming back from this. And I've never seen, like I wasn't around when Jack Crow got fired at Arkansas after game 1. I want to say it was like 1991. Okay. It was a long time ago. I was very much in middle school when it happened. But I just don't remember anything like that. And you've seen it with coordinators, I think, where I remember when Tony Levine was coaching at Houston, he had a coordinator. Game 1 was so much of a disaster that they made a change after the first game. But this was bizarre because this was
Auburn just do that too. Like they were like not deep in, weren't they? Under Freeze last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, yes, but that
was a different. I mean, that was a different situation. I don't know that had to do with play.
Well,
calling.
Actually, one of Auburn's coordinators from last year is on Florida staff right now. So, Ron Roberts. So there you go. But it is such a strange situation because now, because of my job, I'm lucky enough to talk to people around the country. Lucky enough to get to see different teams from around the country. So I did not buy the party line of the roster's better because common sense tells you the roster is not better. All you have to do is look at what went out of the transfer portal and what came in through the transfer portal and the recruiting class and go, no, because you got the 5-star quarterback, DJ Lagway, but the plan wasn't to play him. They're going to have to play him because Graham Mertz has a concussion. The plan wasn't to play him, though. The plan was Graham Mertz was going to be the starter. So if you're talking about a roster for 2024, they had not made it a better roster than 2023. Yet they were expecting different results against the hardest schedule ever. And I didn't understand that. And I didn't understand why everybody was buying it.
Yeah.
And but I will say, like, I'm not trying to make it out like I was predicting the future there because I didn't think it would be that bad. I thought they'd be competitive against Miami. I thought that was a coin flip game because We weren't sure exactly how much you trust Mario Cristobal as a coach, but Miami just so outclassed them at every position group. And when you look at the rest of the schedule, Texas A&M, UCF, which you do need to worry about UCF, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, LSU, Texas, Ole Miss, Florida State. Like, I don't know. That team that played on Saturday can't beat any of those teams.
No, and I'll say this too, man. It's weird because you talk about like expecting the roster to get better. Like, you don't understand how people could expect that. And Florida should be the kind of program that year after year is competitive in those games. I mean, like, especially in the swamp, right? I mean, that was what kind of got me, is like, it's not even okay, are you in a kind of a peak year for your program or anything like that? You should still be competitive at home. And on top of all of that, you kind of have a game. It's like an in-state rivalry game, and there's just so much emotion, so much buildup around it. I mean, I think Miami came in at -2, even on the road.
Yeah.
I mean, so I mean, I don't. It just, that game got away so fast in a way that I just don't think anybody really expected. I mean, I've looked back at these last couple of Georgia games that they've played, and Georgia's needed some luck, man. Like, Georgia's needed some luck to pull away in those games. They were competitive. Florida came out and landed some punches and did some things and played, and that team did not show up in game one against Miami.
The thing about those teams, there's still talent on those teams, and Georgia was their biggest game.
Yeah.
So they would be up as humanly possible for that. But that's what makes this result so shocking too. It's Miami in a season opener. Like, you can't possibly be more up than you would be for that circumstance. And I guarantee they were up for it, and they thought they were ready, and they were just completely humiliated. And I think that's the question. I've wrestled with this, and I've asked people, and I still don't know that I have a good answer for it, because I want to know. And Billy Napier is never going to say this publicly, so we'll never get the real answer to this. Did he actually think he had produced a roster that could be competitive against this schedule? Or did he know he hadn't and was just blowing smoke, telling people what they wanted to hear for an offseason?
I'm curious, Andy, in one of the things that we saw after that game, I went over to Gators Online, the On3 side over there. Corey Bender and those guys do a great job. And the thread that kind of caught my eye was people said, is Florida still a top tier job? And there were a lot of people who said, no, it's not. And they said, this is, it's down bad. And a lot of them pointed to the AD and the Athletic Association as part of the reason that they were kind of towing that line. I'm just curious, from your perspective, where you're sitting and what you've seen, how does that line up with you?
It's not a bad job. They just haven't hired the right coach. You put the right coach in Florida,
I agree.
They can win big. Like,
they're a year two. They're a year two surge with the right coach.
Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way: now they had McElwain and he was winning the SEC East going from 2015 to 2016. But let's say instead of hiring Jim McElwain when they hired Will Muschamp, Kirby Smart wasn't waiting for another job, and they went after Kirby Smart, and Florida had Kirby Smart, from 2015 on. Florida would be Georgia right now.
Yeah.
That's it's the right guy. It's hiring the right guy.
Yeah, like I said, I was surprised to see that level of resignation, and then the fact that they pointed to those sources as being like the issues of all of this, being those were the things.
They're not. I mean, look, is Florida's athletic department run very much the same way it was run when I was a student in the 90s? Yeah, it is. Does it need to be modernized? Absolutely, but that doesn't mean they can't win football games. You put the right coach in there, they would win football games. It's just they have not. Now, here's the thing. Dan Mullen was a really good coach. And that I think the hindsight on Dan Mullen is getting weirder and weirder, because you have Dan Mullen and Matt Berry on ESPN saying, well, you fired him and he had won all these games. Right. But the Dan Mullen who won all those games in the first 3 years was gone. Like, he disappeared after the 2020 season, and came back as another person. And so you had to get rid of that person. Like if Dan Mullen had never changed, he'd probably still be at Florida and winning decently, a decent amount of games.
And here's where I've got to. You're so right about that. I've said this to people before, and the funny thing is, Ed Orgeron did too, right? But at least he did. At least he won a national championship and lost his mind as a football coach. Like Dan Mullen completely lost his fastball after. Hell, man, that's kind of disappointing the way all that went down. You know, I mean, like he completely lost his fastball, and that's something that Florida's been dealing with, coach after coach after coach since Urban Meyer, is not necessarily as much with Will Muschamp, although that was just an on-field, you can't even put a good offense on the field type situation. The infrastructure was actually pretty sound, and there were good players in the program. He even made the comment, "Don't let the next guy tell you he doesn't have good players." And then, you come in. McElwain came in after Muschamp. Is that right? I'm not missing somebody.
Yeah. No, you're not missing it. That was a nice guy. So
McElwain comes in and he's got good players and he coaches them up. But you could tell there was a crumbling infrastructure there from a recruiting standpoint.
Right.
And that may have even gotten weaker under Dan Mullen, who was probably even a better coach than Jim McElwain was, and did what he did and held it together for a good little bit. I mean, they had a couple of top 10 seasons there. But you're right. It yard sailed on him. Everything.
Yep. Yeah. And the McElwain situation was bizarre too. I don't think people understand how weird that was. Like that one went from 0 to 1,000,000 miles an hour in about 6 days.
Yeah.
And now the seeds have been planted for that. Like McElwain started it. They won a bowl game. They played Iowa in the Outback Bowl after the 2016 season. They win, and he's in the press conference, and they're like, well, it's the softball question of this is the launching pad for next season. And he's like, well, yeah, but we'll see how serious the administration is about dedicating resources to it. The athletic director was in the middle of negotiating a raise with Jim McElwain at that point. And he's standing like 6 feet away. So like that was me, but it was, remember, it all kind of went to crap the week of the Georgia game. That Monday, McElwain gets up in his press conference and says he's gotten death threats and his family's gotten death threats.
Yes.
And then the Florida administration, understandably concerned that their head coach and his family are getting death threats, goes to him and says, all right, you need to forward these to us so we can investigate them. We're going to call in, we're going to have the cops investigate it, or we'll turn it over to the FBI or whatever we need to do to protect you. And he's like, I'm not going to get it. And so they put out a press release.
Who, me? No, not me.
I will never forget this. So it was a Monday. I had been in Orlando. I was working for Sports Illustrated at the time. I had been in Orlando. I was at UCF the whole day doing a story on Shaquem Griffin. And so I get done it must have been about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I get in my car to drive home. I'm driving and this email pops in, and it's from UF sports information person. And it's a release that goes out to all the state media. And it says, we looked into the claims that Coach McElwain made, and he declined to give us any further information. And I'm like, you're releasing that to the public? I'm looking down at that. And I look down again. I pull off the side of the road. I'm like, oh crap, they're going to fire him.
Yeah.
Like right now. And they fired him that Sunday.
That was the athletic department's version of saying it came down to him or us, and we chose us.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That was just it. That was a man versus man type thing right there. Human versus human.
Yeah.
No, I got to tell you, I was most taken aback. Also, speaking of things I don't ever recall seeing, the Miami players kind of rushing over there to the recruiting section, and the recruiting staffers from Florida having to fight back the Miami players from recruiting Florida's own recruits that were given free tickets to the game.
Well, wouldn't you do that too if you had easy access to them and you just won 41-17? I mean, who among us wouldn't be like, hey, come to the U?
Dude, I can bet you Georgia's players would have been doing the same thing. Alabama's players would have been doing the same thing.
And everybody's like, why would you put the recruits right next to the tunnel? But so you got to understand the layout of the field. They always have the recruits in that end zone because they are in the team area before and after the game.
Okay.
And so they just bring them out of the team because that tunnel in the middle that Florida comes out of, it just empties out and there's 2 sets of bleachers on either side, and that's where the recruits sit. So the ones that are on the right side of that tunnel, well, the other side of those bleachers butts up against the other tunnel, which happens to be the visitors tunnel. So that's why everybody's like, well, it's stupid. Why would they? I mean, it actually makes sense the way they do it. But if you are Katie Turner, the recruiting staffer who you saw in that video, like her job gets real hard if you lose 41-17, because the other thing is you are also recruiting, like Miami's also recruiting a lot of those players.
Oh, sure.
A lot of the Miami, and because it's Miami, like it may be different if they lose a game like that to Kentucky. Most of the Kentucky players probably don't know any of those guys, but the Miami players may have hosted them on unofficial visits. Yeah. Like
probably seen them a couple times this summer.
Yeah. So like everybody knows and also, I mean, like the Florida recruiting staffers probably know the Miami players because they also recruited them.
Yeah, that's true too. And that's probably what kept that from being
right. I would imagine all of those people knew each other.
Yeah, it made it very weird and kind of, I can't believe I'm seeing what I'm seeing, but that's why it didn't turn into like, kind of a shouting match and an aggressive.
Yeah. They should have brought in that thing that they used to block the view of the guys in the booth. They should have brought the big sheets that they pull to block the recruits off.
Oh my God. Well, what they should have done is immediately ushered them in.
We know that.
Yeah, well, they should have immediately ushered them into the Florida locker room or been like, hey guys, we've got an ice cream buffet back here. Who wants ice cream? Like get them off the field.
The Cavender twins are meeting all the recruits here.
Never mind that they play for Miami.
We got Livy Dunn signing autographs back here, guys.
Exactly. All Skeen said it was cool.
Yeah. Anything to get them back there. Just totally Beyonce them on this thing and just go for it and make it happen. Just get them out of the way so that doesn't happen. So obviously, I mean, I think we'll all be extremely surprised if Billy Napier, a guy with Georgia ties, Georgia, state of Georgia roots, and a guy that I've never heard a bad word about, like not one bad word about in this world. I don't think anybody would be surprised if he's fired at the end of the season. We'll all be pretty shocked if he's not. Who would you say would be a good candidate, like right now, a reasonable candidate that Florida could get that could maybe get them to that point where you're talking, Florida's for real in year 2 of who?
It's not reasonable, probably because he's got a pretty good job. But I think if you're them, you would have to at least ask, is Lane Kiffin.
Sure.
Okay.
So I think Eli Drinkwitz is somebody who they might want to ask and who I don't know if he'd be interested or not. But
I don't know much about him.
Might.
Where are his ties? Where are his?
There are no ties. So he's actually from Arkansas originally. He came up through the Gus Malzahn tree. So he's been with that group and worked with Gus, and then he was the head coach at Appalachian State for a year, and then became Missouri's head coach. So that's kind of where he's from. But he's from Arkansas. Worked with the Gus Malzahn group back when Gus was still a high school coach, when Eli was a very, very young guy.
Speaking of very interesting poll.
Speaking of Gus Malzahn, though, I'm curious. Look, Florida's down bad right now. I think that's fair to say. Like I said, I went and read the message boards, and those people are not doing well. I'm curious, how much worse is it going to be if a directional Florida school, Central Florida, were to overcome the Gators?
Is Central a direction?
Well, sort of. Does not mean
a location. A locational Florida school.
Yeah, sure. No, that's gonna be hard, though. I would assume that would be even harder to swallow than this. I mean, Miami is at least.
I'd say he's got to, the Texas A&M game happens before that. And the team that played against Miami will struggle with Texas A&M. if they're better, that they can compete with Texas A&M. But
Mike Elko is going to want them to be running the damn ball. He was pretty fired up about that the other night against Notre Dame.
Well, they also just lost their center at Texas A&M, so it's a little bit easier said than done on that front. But Elko certainly, I do have faith in him to get things right there. And the Notre Dame thing, like everybody's saying, oh, Texas A&M's offense just stinks.
Notre Dame's good defensively, man.
Notre Dame is an elite defense. Notre Dame, because A&M doesn't play Georgia. Look at the rest of A&M's schedule. Notre Dame might actually be the best defense that A&M plays all year. So Texas is really good. I don't know that LSU's is as good. Missouri is replacing so much on that side of the ball. Missouri's offense can be awesome, but it might actually be the best defense they play all year. So it's entirely possible they're not as bad as people think on offense.
You've been gracious with your time. I want to ask you one more question before we let you go. First week of college football season, I guess first 2 weeks, if you want to count week 0 2. What's kind of gotten you the most, fired up about this season? Your main takeaway, your main prediction. What's the one thing that's resonated with you through the first week 0, week 1?
Just imagining how this is going to go through the next few months with that 12-team playoff, because like watching the USC LSU game and seeing USC win that game. And now I'm thinking ahead of like, okay, who else is on USC's schedule? Which games are winnable? Are there any, because I don't think there's any like surefire losses on USC's schedule if their defense is actually better. Now, it's tough to judge off one game, but I thought their open field tackling was dramatically improved. They had a goal line stand at the beginning of the game that proved to be the difference in the game. So if their defense is actually better, and I've always said I never worry about offense with Lincoln Riley, they really could be competitive for a playoff berth. So imagine this, guys. USC is 9-2, and Notre Dame is 9-2 or 10-1 going into the final regular season game. It may be an elimination game for the playoff at that point.
Feels like it's been a long time since we've seen that importance on that.
Since they were both good at the same time, yeah. And how cool would that be? How amazing would that game be?
I was told the 12-team playoff was ruining the sport. So
I was told that by a lot of people too.
I'm not a huge fan of it, but let's go. Let's just move forward with it and take what you like about it, and you're gonna miss what you missed from the old way, and you got to figure out some new things in the new way that make more sense.
Yeah.
We appreciate it, Andy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man. Thanks.
Good stuff from Andy as always, man.
That was a lot of fun, man. That was the
Jim McElwain thing really got me.
What's funny is we didn't give it to a naked photo with a shark in the.
Oh, sure. You're right.
That was a part of the whole thing. I actually wanted to speak up at one point, and I'm bad about interrupting. I need to get better at that, and I'm sorry for it. But I wanted to speak up at one point and be like, hey, I think it was a mistake to bring Andy on here under the premise that I've never seen anything like that before, because we had a naked man hugging a shark that made its way around the internet.
Did we ever determine that was not Jim McElwain, was it?
I don't know, man.
I wasn't it rumored that it was possibly the Jimmy John's guy too?
It was rumored that, yes, but listen, I've never
How did we not get a positive ID on that guy?
I don't know how we don't do a 30 for 30 on this. And maybe we're the guys. Do you think our buddy John T. Edge, with his video and with his producing experience, would go in with that on us?
Yeah. No, maybe. We might be able to do that. And honestly, listen, in talking to Andy, everybody talks about how crazy those Urban Meyer teams were. And that's true. Obviously we've learned a lot about those guys in the years since. But in hearing him talk about all of that, I'd forgotten about some of that stuff. It's somehow almost been weirder for Florida since Urban Meyer left, and which seems impossible given all the problems they had when all the problems those guys were creating behind the scenes.
I don't know, man. It's just been a lot of. I tell you what, man. If you think about it, you can go all the way back to Steve Spurrier area. And that's a good thing, because Spurrier was good for the sport, and all of his trash talking, and always had something stirred up.
Did you how do you feel about Spurrier?
Oh man, I love him. I think
I do
looking back in real time as a Georgia fan, going through my formidable years as a Georgia fan, that 1997 win meant the world to me as a 14-year-old. Like that was amazing. The 98 loss, 99 loss, all of them. Just just start reeling them off. They all sucked. They stole my soul. They made me cry. Sure. All of this stuff. 2002. I know he doesn't listen to the show, but I had a buddy at Valdosta State. I went to Valdosta State for one semester when I graduated high school. And I had a buddy at Valdosta State named Cliff Rushton. And Cliff was from Albany. Went to, I believe he went to Westover High School, I believe.
Yeah, Trent Thompson.
Trent Thompson went to school, yeah. And me and Cliff just, met, became fast friends, became good buddies. And he was a big Georgia fan then. Georgia had gone, I think they were 7-0, 8-0 entering that Florida game that year, and it was Rick's second year. He had the man enough game against Alabama. It was a magical season to that point. And Georgia was supposed to have, well, they lost the game, obviously. DJ Shockley threw a pick six, and David Green had a fumble, and it was just a weird game. And Georgia was missing a linebacker. I think Chris Clemens was injured for that game, and Florida did a good job attacking it. And so to kind of illustrate what kind of fan I was at that time, it was my freshman year of college, 19 years old. I didn't go to class for a week.
Out of depression, or were you like
sheer depression?
Wow.
Just stayed in my dorm room and just pouted all week long.
Were you glued to the PlayStation 1? Were you like eating Fruit Loops? I mean, were you just not getting out of bed? I mean, how did you
Comedy Central?
Okay.
Watching a lot of Comedy Central, beating peanut butter and jellies.
Honestly, as that sounds like pure depression, it also doesn't sound so bad to me. If you could spend a week doing that right now, that wouldn't be the worst.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. But yeah, that was so. So I get it, and that Florida rivalry, but going all the way back, I still love Spurrier. I think looking back and kind of as I've gotten into this business and looked back on some of the things he said and some of the things he did over the years, great coach, obviously. Turned that rivalry completely around, and hated him in real time, but I think he was great for the sport, and I think he's a hilarious dude.
I miss the personality. We need more of that. I think we're missing that in the game. Everybody takes themselves so seriously, and it's one of the reasons I like Lane Kiffin, because Lane Kiffin, he's not as I guess like folksy. Like Steve Spurrier seemed like a guy like a ball coach you might have in high school. Right. Yeah. I mean, he kind of had that thing to him, and he would say the stuff that kind of rang with those guys. Lane Kiffin's a little bit more mischievous, obviously, for a number of reasons. But I mean, he's kind of got some personality, and I appreciate that, man. I think that we need more of that in the game. I don't like coach speak. It's not, these are people too, right? I mean, they have emotions, and they're probably, I'm sure Kirby Smart's a cool guy to hang out with when you're not doing football stuff,
I'm sure he is.
Or maybe he's not. Maybe he's an asshole. I don't know. I've never experienced it.
I bet Billy Napier's a pretty good guy.
I bet Billy Napier would be a cool guy to have a beer with.
But what I was kind of getting at was you go all the way back to Steve Spurrier's personality, and then the dysfunction that Ron Zook and everything that came with that, and then the dysfunction that came with Urban Meyer in the championships and I know a guy who went to Florida and got to spend some time with him this summer, and he was like, yeah, man, I was at Florida during that time, and everybody knew these were not good dudes. These were dangerous dudes. So I wasn't even talking about Aaron Hernandez. There was this Marcus Thomas guy, I think was his name, that was a defensive tackle during the Urban Meyer era, and he was I think he got kicked off the team and then got to rejoin the team because of some off-field stuff. And
wasn't there something going on with the Pouncies?
I don't know. I think the Pouncies were basically choir children compared to everybody else.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that one dude got drafted in the NFL. The NFL don't play that. They didn't draft Aaron Hernandez.
They did. Yes, they did.
But yeah, and then you go all the way up into kind of the post-Urban Meyer era where it's just been drama after. I mean, LSU's there, Georgia, we're there too. That's the thing. If you're an outside program and you're kind of looking at Georgia, I mean, dude, we had a guy get his finger lopped off.
Yeah, sure. Oh, absolutely.
And then he sued, right? And then the suit came through on the day that his son unexpectedly entered the transfer portal.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I mean, some of the stuff that, I mean, the whole JT Daniels situation.
Sure.
Dude, JT Daniels came to Georgia. I think he went 6-0 as a starter, 7-0 as a starter, 7-0. Threw for over 300 yards like 3 times in 7 starts, or 4 times, 5 times in 7 starts. So some ridiculous amount. And then
ended up at Rice.
I'm no good anymore. JT Daniels, if JT Daniels had stayed healthy, I think he leads Georgia to a national championship.
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah, that's incredibly possible. But he ended up at Rice, Jake.
And that was after he stopped like 2 other places.
Yes, it was. It absolutely was.
It's like JT, I loaded up the van. I would love JT to Bark After Dark, because I do think, from everything I've heard, and, you know, I think Stetson hinted that JT kind of tapped out with his you know, physical issues. And as somebody who has had a couple of major knee injuries, like, pain sucks, and I don't know, maybe JT just wasn't with it anymore as far as that goes. Maybe
you and JT Daniels have a lot in common, I think.
Plenty. The way we dress, our face shape.
Sure.
Yeah, he's got a big bowl.
I will say, I think if you cut your mustache, you might have that kind of Johnny Ringo mustache like he had. So
yeah, tilts down a little bit.
Yeah,
that whole thing, man. I mean, that's such a weird situation, and he just, I don't know. I think he's a great kid. I've heard awesome things about how supportive he was for Stetson, kind of down that stretch and everything.
I think his would be
Bark After Dark.
I would love to get him on too, because I think he has an amazing story. I mean, you have to realize, and I remind people of this all the time, JT Daniels reclassified to be in the class that he was in. He was a year younger and ended up in that class.
Let me correct that. I don't think he was a year younger. I think
school-wise he was.
Yeah, school-wise he was, but I think as far as like age-wise, I think like he was, I don't necessarily know that he was a held-back kid.
Maybe an on-the-line guy, though?
Yeah, like right there, like a close kid, like kind of a summer birthday type deal.
Right.
And so he didn't – I don't want to pretend like, oh, my God, he was at USC zinging it around at 16 years old during his first year.
But, I mean, he ended up – like, he was a number 1 player in his class, reclassified, and was still a top 5 player in that class, which had Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields in it.
Yeah.
I mean, and then
had a very promising freshman season, like won the starting job.
Oh, absolutely.
Last 2 games of the regular season, over 300 yards passing against Notre Dame and UCLA in big football games, like huge games. And then, you know, rips his knee to pieces, has multiple surgeries on it.
You
got jamokes like me and Rusty over here saying, hey, listen, I think this is Stetson's team. Well, Stetson runs out there and gets hurt. DeJuan Mathis' second chance went marginally better than the first chance, which went poorly.
I could tell you were really figuring out how to phrase that one.
Yeah, went poorly. And Stetson gets hurt, and they're not going to go to DeJuan, so they go to JT, and the MFer goes out and throws for 400 yards.
Yeah.
Jermaine Burton, I think people forget about Jermaine Burton that night. He had like 180 yards receiving that one night. And then I think he has another big game against Missouri. He has a good game against he didn't play all that great in the first half, but he brings Georgia back against Cincinnati. Didn't play well against Clemson. You find out he's hurt. He torches South Carolina. He torches Vanderbilt. And all of a sudden, poof, he's gone.
Yeah.
Stetson's the guy. And the kid that they tried to run off twice ends up winning 2 national championships. I guess that's the difference between good drama and bad drama.
Sure, absolutely. We've done a lot of football talk here. I think we need to talk about the fact, though, that someone gave us a damn radio show. Yeah,
we do have a radio show.
Which unbelievable.
We use the radio show to promote Dawgs HQ. We might as well use the Bark After Dark here to promote our radio show. It is it's called, I don't know. I was gonna call it something like vulgar or something real quick, just to kind of see if I could make you laugh, but I couldn't think of anything.
Was that the hope when we started this, that it would lead to something like that, or was it just that? I mean, I felt like we just kind of entered into this goofing around, and this has been a fun byproduct. I mean, always a dream, right? But never thought it possible, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've made it. I think this is
this is it, man.
we peaked. Hey, listen, for somebody like myself who really for the longest time, for a good long time, has battled with the idea of peaking in high school.
Sure.
I'm welcome to another peak. Okay. I mean, it's just, that's kind of like
you have got to be in the running for most famous person from Pearson. You've got to be.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I think it's very possible.
Yeah. Me or Ole Geech, one or the other.
Ole Geech, yeah, I forgot about this story.
Me or Ole Geech. Atkinson County lore, baby. Atkinson County lore. Yeah, I was telling Roos about this the other day. Did you ever read up on it?
I didn't. I did not get a chance to read up on it. No, I was hoping we'd discuss it here. I wanted you to tell it to me.
There was a sharecropper who worked in, I'll make this story as short as I can. There was a sharecropper who worked in Atkinson County. I don't know if it was Willacoochee, Axon, Pearson, Lelandson. I don't know where it was at, but he worked land. And I believe this late 1800s, early 1900s. This is post slavery. Mr. Geech was a African American gentleman, and he was sharecropping, but he worked real closely with this farmer. This farmer was abusive to his wife, and his wife poisoned him. Later confessed on her deathbed that she poisoned her husband and killed him. The crime, she confessed on her deathbed because she was guilty, because the crime was pinned on Ole Geech. Now, I'm sure Mr. Geech has a real name, and I just can't remember it. I wasn't prepared to talk about this, but I'm going to talk about this. So they hung Mr. Geech at the Pearson courthouse, at the Athens County Courthouse in Pearson, and that building is still up today. It's still functional today, and
same building. Wow.
He said he made a multiple claims, but the two that people latched onto the most was that Pearson would wither away and die. It's doing its best, by the way. No Wilma's Cafe anymore. I mean, it's Bobby's Treat Shop's hanging on by a thin thread. The Hardee's is gone. I don't know what we're doing.
Oh, when you lose the Hardee's, things are getting bleak.
Yeah, the Hardee's is gone. It's rough. It's rough times. Miss Betty Summerlin passed away, one of my favorite people in the world, not too long ago. They're trying to sell her house right now. It breaks my heart. But anyway, so he said that Pearson would never amount to anything that would wither away. And that has been the truth. And that the clock on this courthouse right here will never work again. Well, they hung him, and the clock worked for a few days, and it didn't anymore. And then they fixed it over 24 times over the course of about 60, 70 years.
No kidding.
And it stopped working every time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is this a true story?
It's a true story.
That really happened? Because that sounds like an urban legend.
It does. It totally does. And I'll be honest with you, the first time I learned about it, I was in like the 4th grade. No, I was in the 5th grade, because I remember whose class I was in. And I got creeped out by it, man. Like, I got really creeped out by it. And then my teacher, Miss McKinnon, brought in her grandmother, who sat down and kind of told us. She was there whenever he spoke to the crowd, whenever he got a chance to say his last words. She was actually there. And she just, I don't know, she kind of brought like a little bit more of this was just real people and a real thing. This wasn't like this big supernatural deal. But I have a hard time thinking that's coincidental.
That's, you guys learned some different stuff from us down there, is what I would say.
Well, the thing was that it came out in somebody put together.
Also, I think your internet connection is wild right now, or maybe it's mine. I don't know.
Yeah, one of our internet connections is bad, because I'm seeing you as all of a catchy.
You're a still on mine, so
okay. Well, I don't know whose internet's trying to mess up right now.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. We're getting it back now. But somebody had put together like a history of Atkinson County packet, like a Belgian copy. You know, like you sit to go, you get those at UGA. They have to go to Belgian downtown to pick up like a reader. Somebody had put together a reader, and it had started, and like it started making its, well, a bunch of them, they started making their way downtown. They gave a few of them in the schools and stuff like that. And we started reading it. We all latched onto this story, and it kind of became a story that just made its way through the elementary school. We had a K-7 elementary school, and it kind of just made its way through. And we all started talking about it. And the teachers were like, "Hey, these kids want to learn about this. Let's see what we can do to kind of get them there." She's like, "Yeah, I got a grandmother that was there," and it was like a 2-week deal back in 5th grade for me.
The urban legends we told were like Marilyn Manson had a rib removed.
Yeah, we told that one.
Have you ever heard that one?
I probably got to that one about 3 years later than everybody.
Yeah, sure. You make it sound like you're the Amish down there.
I mean, it ain't far from it, dude. Like, I mean, it's not like it was the information superhighway. We're not the high tech corridor like Tifton. Okay?
Yeah, right. Sure.
We're not the state's high tech corridor.
They got a Western Sizzler there, for God's sake.
Yeah, I mean, they got a Longhorn now. It's unbeatable.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Tifton can't tell Tifton nothing. Not to get one.
It's how, oddly enough, that has become like a symbol of a town taking a turn. The Longhorn.
Yeah.
Things are like all of a sudden everybody's like, we're going out to a nice meal tonight. We're going out to, we're going to go have and I got Longhorn, not a bad chain restaurant in my opinion.
I prefer Outback, but
I do as well. But Longhorn is not bad. The steak is pretty good.
I also wanted to say for the great city of Douglas, not just a Longhorn, brother. I'm talking about a Longhorn, a Publix, a Chick-fil-A, a PetSmart, and a Hobby Lobby, all within like a 3 or 4 year span.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, listen, they taught us in Georgia history growing up. It was, Savannah, Augusta, Louisville, Milledgeville, and Atlanta, where Salma was how I remembered it, was the Douglas coming after you, Atlanta.
Yeah. Sure.
South Georgia's wanting that capital back. That's where it started. Need to bring it back. Now, all right, let's do what all teenagers do.
A special time in any young man's life. No, I'm curious, Jake. We have talked about the radio show. We mentioned that, and I'm just curious, man. We talked about, maybe you being the most famous person in Pearson. We talked about the radio show. Like, could you ever have imagined that it was all going to lead here? I tell people all the time, they're like, oh man, I know you. I'm like, dude, if I'm a celebrity, I'm a Q-list celebrity in the state of Georgia. Like, if you got to be down a rabbit hole to know who I am. But I mean, could you have ever imagined that even this many people would know your name?
No, never. And I mean, this is so much different than I thought. Cause like I was, when I was in high school, I was very involved in church and I honestly thought that I was probably going to become like a minister, like a youth minister or something like that. Like that's what I thought that kind of going into college. And then, life kind of gets at you a little bit and you kind of figure out, well, I don't necessarily have to do that to share my beliefs and all that stuff. And I started to kind of fall in love with football again after a couple of years. It kind of burnt me out in high school, kind of getting hurt and doing all that stuff. And I still loved watching it. But then like the more I kind of got away from it, I went back home a couple of times and I was like, man, I think I want to coach. So I got into teaching and coaching and kind of did that. And then, it led to this. I never considered, like in high school, even though I wrote for the school paper and, we had
journalism. Did you? I didn't know that.
I wrote for the school paper. Well, actually, no, I didn't write for the school paper. We didn't have a school paper. I wrote for the Athens County Citizen. I did sports for the Athens County.
The local newspaper.
Yeah, I used to write gamers for games I played in.
Wow.
Yeah, you don't think for a second Jake Rose 2 for 4 didn't get in that story every time.
Sure, I bet. Yeah.
If I got multiple hits, I don't care if I had 2 singles, no runs, no RBI. And Jake Rowe also went 2 for 4, extending his.
I bet. Did your mom have those up on the fridge too?
Let me tell you how crazy this was, though. Yeah, my mom's got a lot of clips, but let me tell you how crazy this was. This was how awesome. So we had a guy named Hal Langford. Mr. Langford was Mr. Atkinson County. He called the high school football games in the stadium. Stephen Favors down there with the tackle and all that stuff.
Stephen Favors was a real kid, wasn't he?
Yeah, and
I knew you didn't pull that name out.
Everybody, do I know?
I knew you didn't make that name up.
No, that's Hal Langford. The reason his name was Hal was his real name was Henry Austin Langford, and it was Hal. And so his mom called him Hal.
No, I meant Stephen Favors.
No, Stephen Favors was our high school running back. 100%.
Also real. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
His nickname was Mim. So yeah, well, he was our high school tailback, great player. So he was our journalism teacher. And so after a baseball game, I would want to go ahead and go get it done. And Mr. Langford was always going to be up in his classroom. So I'd go knock on his classroom window and he'd come let me in the side door. And I would sit there and I would write it out by hand onto a piece of notebook paper and hand it into him. And he would type it up and format it and send it to the paper.
What? Why did he have to type it?
I don't know. Well, he wanted it done.
Okay. Did he run the paper?
No, he just ran kind of the sports section and the student contribution part to it.
Huh.
Which was a heavy contribution part. I mean, I think there was one full-time staffer and somebody who sold, and that person I think had ad sales responsibilities, and they had somebody else selling ads full-time. I mean, it was the biggest thing about the Atkinson County Citizen was the Pearson Personals, which was the little ads that people would put in the paper, like Johnny Lee Tanner brought both of his kids and such over to the Taft house this weekend. A great time was had by all.
I can't believe you guys are still doing that at that time.
Oh, no doubt about it, dude. My grandmother, my mom's mom actually paid for me to have a subscription when I moved away. And so I would get the paper all the time, and I would just go straight to the personals, and I like, hey man, who was down at the river this weekend?
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's cool though that you had that journalism, like you were doing that, man. Like I
never thought I'd do that for a career. It just didn't.
Of course, sure. But I
did jump into J school a little bit after getting to Georgia, and started. I took some kind of the prereqs to get into Grady, but I don't know, man. I never really wanted to get into like really reporting as much as I wanted to get into kind of long form writing or get in on the sports info side of it with like PR and stuff like that. So
sure.
But I never did.
I was also on the high school newspaper. So.
Okay. You did yearbook too, didn't you?
No, I did not do yearbook. I was the yearbook. Yes. In one of the not great yearbooks that Clark Central ever had. I apologize. I was not in a good headspace during that.
Brother, let me tell you something. I taught high school for about 4 years and 4.5 years. And every teacher that I ever worked with that worked yearbook was the toughest year of their life. And it was like, I am never doing this again. We had one of the most mild-mannered, sweetest girls ever. Like, she was just easygoing at Cedar Shoals. And she had been there for about 15 years, and she had never done yearbook, and she got talked into doing yearbook. And I never heard her curse until that year. And it was every other breath.
I found out that you were hired by 247 on the way to yearbook class, in fact, that year. And so I immediately had to hop on the message boards at UGA Sports and announce that I was now the full-time recruiting guy, which was probably my big memory from that class.
There's a Clark Central student that looks and finds a typo in that yearbook, and they just don't know the butterfly effect that took to get that typo.
Absolutely.
All right, I had one to ask you, and I had it in the original headline of the show, but we're going to change the original headline of the show to put in my man Ole Geech. So I was thinking about it the other day, and something had happened. I'd asked you to do something. I was like, man, I hope I'm not pissing this guy off. And I thought to myself, I was like, I cannot remember the last time Jake Roos got cross mad at anybody for anything. Roos, what does it take to get you mad?
That's a really good question, Jake. And the answer is I don't really know. This is like
the people versus Larry Flint and porn. You know it when you
right. It doesn't happen a lot, man. I don't get angry a lot. And that's probably to my detriment. There are probably things I should get angry about that I don't.
I was not expecting a humble brag on the show.
No, that manifest themselves. It manifests itself, I think, in other ways.
My weakness is I care too much.
Yeah, exactly. No, it manifests itself in other ways. I think I end up getting depressed rather than getting angry.
Okay.
And I probably internalize it like that. And I'm just
made fun of you
not-
about something serious, and I'm sorry for that.
I'm not an aggressive person. You know that. I'm just not, man. Like I'm conflict avoidant. I'd rather just walk away. And in most cases, especially if I feel like I'm in the right, I'm just not going to argue with you. Like I feel how I feel. You feel how you feel. It's all good, man. Like if that's how you want to believe, then that's cool. I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you otherwise.
That's something we got in common about the arguing thing. I never argue with people on message boards, like ever.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Never.
Yeah. Now, a good message board engagement is different. I will get in deep on that. Now, we had a good one with the Travis Hunter stuff the other day. I got really into it.
Travis Hunter or Scotty Scheffler, which one was better?
Oh, the Scheffler thread was so much better because that guy was just so dug in on it. I mean, you just could not convince him that
it doesn't even bother me either. Like, I mean, good for him that was some entertaining times.
It'll probably be the best thread we've had all year.
Yeah, I had to cut it loose. If you don't know what we're talking about, there's a thread on the Dawgs HQ message board the day Scotty Scheffler got arrested, didn't get fired. And just everything that went down. And there was this one guy that was dying on the hill that Scheffler was
glazing.
This was justified.
You're glazing him, bro.
Yeah, you're glazing him.
No, I don't know, man. I mean, can you recall a time that you saw me angry?
Nah, I've seen you flustered. I wouldn't say angry.
Yeah. Flustered is
you play some video games where you'd be like, damn
it. Sure. Yeah, you get me on NBA Jam and get working me. I can get like that.
I can't get a shot off.
Now, I will say this, comparatively of the two of us, I am much more even kill when that kind of thing starts. I've seen you just get beat red. I mean, shaking the controller like it owes you money, man.
Yeah.
I mean, so of the two of us, I'm a lot more even keel in that regard.
The funny thing about that is I see that in my own son.
Yeah.
When he plays a video game, like I see it. And I know how my dad probably must have felt because I think my dad's probably the same way. So it's kind of a generational thing. But I hope my son's got something that I don't have, which is I kind of grab when my video game anger is kind of like grabbing a live wire and I can't turn loose of it. Like I will not stop playing because it's making me mad.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to quit on my terms, brother.
Sure.
That's how it goes for me. All right, listen, do you have any parting shots for these people? The show's gone a lot longer than I thought it was going to.
No, not really, man. I mean, I hope they tune in over to Roos and Row. We're on the Superstations, thesuperstations.com/live. You can listen to it. We do it on Sundays, normally at 6 p.m. It's a lot of fun over there. Get over to Dawgs HQ, hang out with us there. Look, yeah. We're men about town. We're men about town is what I would say.
I've got to say, man, we are on fire right now. I feel like at Dawgs HQ.
Oh, no, that game thread the other day was a killer.
Yeah, we are. I really do feel like we are on fire at Dawgs HQ. That would be better if I just go that sentence correctly. This is so dark after dark. We are on fire at Dawgs HQ. Here's my infomercial. Okay, we're putting out great content right now. We need you over there, man. We need you over there. We want you on that wall. We need you on that wall. It's going to be a big.
Look, if you think Bark After Dark is fun, I promise you, we are the same people over on the message board.
So we got gifts and stuff. Like we got just a bank of gifts at our disposal.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Come on over and hang out with us for real, though. Hit us up with a DM or something. We're growing as a site. I'm hoping we're going to be able to put some get-togethers here in the near future so that we can kind of come, go do this thing live. Maybe I think Bark After Dark might be the only show anybody wants to see live.
Bark After Dark live with some Dawgs HQ folks would be something.
Yeah, would be fun especially if we could get Dana Point / Laguna Dog and all the people that make up that persona. It'd be great. Probably take an army. It's probably a whole lot.
It's just you, but
it is me.
You're Tyler Durden.
I did it all.
Yeah.
30 for 30 producers. I'll do the 30 for 30 with you. All right, y'all. Take care. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll be back next Monday. Oh.